Starting to learn now the first Pedic, the first Mishnah and the first Pedic of the Masechta Bava Kama and the Seder Nizikin, and we're learning to benefit the soul of our dear son, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, who was taken away all of a sudden in the prime of his life. He was a dedicated Torah Jew who spread Torah to all people without distinction. He gave classes every day, every night, learned Torah and taught Torah, did the Miftzayim, brought people closer to their Father in heaven. And we're learning this within the Shloshim, actually within just last week, we got up from Shiva. So we're learning this to benefit his soul. The neshama should have an aliyah. Mishnah Aleph, in chapter 1 in Tractate Bava Kama. Zog the Mishnah Arba Ovis Nizikin. There are 4 main categories of Nizikin. Nizikin are those who cause damage, and the Gemara calls them Arba Ovis Nizikin, 4 fathers or 4 main categories of damages. And the Bartanura explains Arba Ovis Nizikin, Mishum the Iko Lechol Chad Minayu Toldos, because each of these 4 have derivatives. They're the children. So Kori Luhu Ovis, that's why he calls them the main category of Nizikin. The categories that the Mishnah is going to enumerate, the 4, those are main categories because each one of them also has a secondary, has a tilde, and that's why they're called the 4 main categories, the 4 Ovis Nizikin. And the first one the Mishnah counts is Hashoir, is the ox. Now, the ox, as we'll see, what it means here, explains the Bartanura. What kind of a damage of the ox? So the Bartanura, Hashoir hu haregel. That what we mean here is damages that the ox does with its feet by walking. The hainu, that is that which the animal does damage with her feet as it's walking. That's one of the categories. That's the shoyer. That's the number 1. Where is this in the pasuk? Kedikasiv, in the pasuk in Shmois Perik Chav Beis, the pasuk says, "V'shilach es beiroi." The pasuk talks about the one who sends his cattle, ubir bizdeachar. Basically, he sends the cattle. The shilach over here, sending, refers to the damages that the ox does by walking. Vetanya, because we learned in Abraisa, what does it mean he sent the beiroi? He sent the cattle. That vishilach zeharegel. That vishilach, he said, means the damage that comes by the foot. The animal goes, it tramples, it does damage as it's walking. What's the connection to sending shilach with the regel? So the Gemara, the Tanya, brings down a braha pasuk v'cheinu omer, and so the pasuk says in Yeshaya, in chapter Lamed Beis 32, it says there, Mishalchei regel hasher v'chamoir, those who send the feet of the ox and the donkey. So we see the word mishalchei v'shilach is associated with the feet, and therefore this refers to the damages of the feet. So when the Mishnah says the first category is ashoir, is the foot, the damages, as we learn from the pasuk v'shilach as beiroi, is the damages that the animal does with its feet. Zog the Bartanura, the Tzulda de Regel he, what would be a derivative? We said Arba Ovis. So the shoyer, the av, is when it tramples with its feet, does damage by walking. What would be a derivative of regel, betul regel he? Ki shehiziko begufo derech hilucha. If it does damage, not with the foot, the pasuk v'shilach hasbir, it talks about the foot, but what happens when it does damages with the body, not with the first foot, derech hilucha, as it was walking, meaning in its usual way, the animal was walking, and with her body she did damage, or with the hair that's on the animal, derech hilucha, by way of walking, so it's walking and it does damage. Shenitbeku kelim besayro, that there were vessels pasted to her hair, they were attached to the hair. Vigorosom vishibartum, and she dragged them and she broke those vessels. So that's also, it's not with the foot. This is with the hair. It's the body and the hair. She drags it, it connected to the hair, and she dragged it. And she broke it. Or another example of a tulda, of a derivative, would be bishlif she'oleho. The shalif means the sack that's on her. There is various kinds of sack that the animal carries. V'hu masui shebe'amtechois is the load which is in the large sacks. Ubemartzupin, those are smaller sacks. She'oleho, which is on the animal. So it carries a load, and with the load, it goes ahead and it does damage. Or it's with the bell that the animal carries around her neck, and again, it does damage. So all the damages which are done in the animal as it's walking, whether it's done, the Torah talks about the foot that's trampling, or whether it is damaging with the body, or he damages with the hair and the road as it's walking, and it breaks vessels, or with the bags that it's carrying on it, or with the bell. As long as it's along the way, this is going to be a tulda, a derivative of regel. Regel, shoyer, the regel is the av nizikin, the main category, and the other ones are derivatives, are tuldas. Then we have the second thing the Mishnah says is vehaboir. Boir means the pit. Explains the Bartanura. Hapeseyach boir b'rshus harabim. One who opens up a pit in the public domain, it belongs to the public. He doesn't have a right to make a stumbling block, to make a pit in the middle of the public domain. So if he opens up, meaning even if he didn't dig it, there was a manhole over there, and he goes and opens up the hole, the boir, in the public domain. So then in the pit falls an ox or a donkey, v'meis, and they die. Now, in order to be liable for the death of the animal, the condition is im haboir amuk hasoret tvachim. If the pit is deep 10 tvachim, that's a large enough pit for the animal to die when it falls in there. If it's less than 10 tfachim, not as deep, or if the animal gets damaged, if it's a pit which is less than 10 tfachim, you would not be chayiv for death, because normally animals don't die in such a small pit, which is less than 10 tfachim, but it could get damaged. So if it was damaged, if it's less than 10 tfachim, so that would be a main category. Again, the main category means because it's written in the Torah. Diksiv, the pasuk in Perek Chof Aleph in Shmos says, "Ki yiftach ish boir v'gomer," when one opens up a pit. So the Torah talks about opening up a pit and in the public domain, and the person who opened the pit is responsible. What would be the derivative of the boir, the tool of the boir? What would be a derivative of the boir? So boir is a hole in the Rishus Harabim. Is kigoin keicha v'neya. These are the various different keicha v'neya that it's from the mouth, spit, saliva, or other things that come out from the inside, and he spit onto the public domain. So it's not that he did damage while he was spitting, but he spit in the public domain and then it rested in the Rishus Harabim. So it's not a pit, but it's a damage in the public domain, viziku, and they did damage. The animal came and slipped over that kicha v'niyeh, so then he would be responsible. That's a derivative. The Torah talks specifically about a boir, about a pit. But if you put another stumbling block, such as you spit in the public domain in a way that causes damage after it rests, and somebody goes and gets hurt by it, and the animal goes and gets hurt by it, then you would be responsible. Then the third thing the Mishnah said is hamave. What is hamave? Hamave zogt bartanura zahashem. That is the tooth. That is when the animal does damage by eating. His animal goes and eats in the field of his friend, so he does damage. It ate up the vegetation, the crops from his friend's field. That's also a Torah. That's an av. This shein kidiksiv ubiyer bizdeachar, because the verse in Perichov Beis says that it will eat, it will pasture in the other one's field, meaning he's eating up. One is the vishilach doing with the regel, and the other one is eating in the other one field. What's the exact meaning of the word maveh? It's shein. It means the tooth, but what is the translation of the word maveh? Why is the tooth called maveh? And the reason why the tooth is called maveh, maveh means reveals. A tooth is sometimes open, sometimes hidden. When the mouth is closed, then you don't see the teeth. When the mouth is opened up, then you see it. Sometimes it is covered, sometimes it is open. And the Loshen Mave is Miloshen Nivu Matspunov. In Evadya Perik Aleph, the hidden has been revealed. The Metargiminon, the translation of Nivu Matspunov is translated as Igalian Metamroi, that the hidden have been revealed. So Mave is revealed. The tooth is called Mave because it's sometimes hidden, sometimes revealed. The Tulda Deshenhi. So that's the main category the Torah talks about, biyer bizdeachar. What is the derivative, the secondary? It's the av. What is the tool? The sheni is kishenischachacho b'koisel lahanaosa. If the animal scratches itself against the wall because it's enjoying it, food it enjoys, it eats because that's what it does, because enjoyment. So scratching against the wall, when enjoying it, in the nature of the animals that they scratch, but this is done for pleasure. And she broke the wall, but she scratched against the wall. That would be a derivative of shein, because the idea of shein is that it's eating because it enjoys. In this case, it enjoys scratching against the wall, and it does damage. So the main category that Torah talks about, the av, is eating in somebody else's field. That's the av of maver, shein. But scratching and breaking down a wall, oitinfo pedis, or let's say she dirtied and ruined the fruit, when she was scratching against the fruit, for her enjoyment, and then she ruined the fruit. So then that would be a derivative of the damage of Mava of Shem. And then you have Hahever. The fourth category is a fire. So the Shoyre Mave is through the ox, is the foot and the eating. The boyer is the person creating a stumbling in the public domain. And then you have the hever. What is hever? Hever is fire. The hever zu hadleko sheyotzo v'hiziko. This is a fire that has gone out and done damage. Kediksiv, the Pasuk said, where's the verse talk about it? It's an Av. Pasuk says, in Shmos Chobeis, ki seitzei eish, when a fire comes out, v'nechal godish oy hakoma oy hasoda. It eats up a granary where it's the grain is stocked, oy hakoma, or the standing grain while it's still in the field, oy hasoda, or it ruins the field. The fire ruins the field. So that would be the eish. If you make a fire and the fire goes out and it burns down a granary or the standing in the field or the field itself, that is the Av, that is the main category that the Torah mentions befedish. What would be the tulda the eish? What would be the derivative of eish? So that would be Avnoi v'sakinoy u'masoy. He put his stone or a knife or a load. Sheinichon bereish gago. You put it on the top of your roof. So you have a stone, a knife, and a load, and you put it in your house on top of the roof. But then v'noflu beruach metzuya. They fell from the roof with a common wind, which means you needed to expect it. V'hezeka, as they fell down from the roof, they did damage. This is called the derivative of fire because dumya de'esh sharuach melicha. This is similar to fire, in which the wind leads the fire to the other one's field to destroy it. Over here, the wind, common wind that you should have expected, pushed the knife and the load, the stone, the knife, and the load are down to the ground, and that did damage. Okay, so now it turns out that in the two categories, shane, the tooth, and the regel in the animal, but in the Torah, there's actually a third category about the animal, and that's when the animal gores. So the Bartanura is asking now, how come we only counted 4? Why didn't we count the damage of Keren? Why didn't we count the damage that when the horn goes and does damage? And the fact, the reason why our Tana in the Mishnah does not count the horn when the animal goes and gores, included in the main categories of Nezikin, it's a pasuk. Just like the other 4 are psukim in the Parshas Mishpatim, this is also a pasuk talks about goring, because Bartanura answers goring has its own din that you pay the first 3 times you pay chatzi nezek, and therefore we're only talking about main categories that pay full right the very first time. He's only dealing about those damages which are muad from the way beginning. Kloimar, what does it mean they are muad? Muad means that they are fully responsible. They become known to do this damage. They mean that they pay it fully. Abul betamin, but when we talk about goring, if it's a tam, the first 3 times, v'achakach modim. So then first you start off the first 3 times, he only pays half a nezek, half a damages. And then, so that we're not talking about the Mishnah, that's why it's not 5, it's 4. Abul betamin, v'achakach modim lekomayri. But the Mishnah isn't talking about cases which first they start off a tam and then a muad. He's not talking about. He doesn't want to talk about a chatzi nezek, and he doesn't want to talk about a nezek sholim that only comes after first being a tam and paying a chatzi nezek. That's why we're only talking about the three categories and not the category, not the category of goring of the ox. Now the Mishnah says further, Lo yihare hashoir kahare amavi. You cannot compare the damage that the ox does to the damage that the tooth does. The ox, the trampling, that the damage that it does, you cannot. It's not the same as the food that the animal eats. What we're trying to say is, at the end of the day, whether the animal eats the other ones, the grain, or the animal is trampling, what's the difference? Seems to be basically the same idea. So why do we have to Torah write both of them? So the Mishnah that lo yihare hasher kare amavet translates the Bartanura. Lo yihare hasher kare amavet. They're not the same. Kuleimar, what it means to say is, I kosav rachamona shoir. Had the Torah just written the damage of ox, which means that it is walking. Loi nofik mave minei. You would not know that you would be responsible if the ox eats in your field. And that's why the Torah needed to separately tell you if the ox tramples. And then another thing is when the ox eats, and you would not be able to learn that. You'll say if you're responsible for trampling, you'll be also responsible for eating. No. The Hava Amina, because one could think, if the Torah didn't specify it, that you should only be responsible for doing damage while it's walking. The Hava Amina, why? Regel de hazeka motzu chayiv rachmona. This is a common damage that the animal walks. So that happens all the time. The animal walks. So the Torah obligated the owner of the animal if his animal went and did damage as it's walking, because you have to watch your animal. That's the common way that the animal goes. It does damage. But Shane, the Ein Zekamotsu, it's not as common that the animal should go into somebody else's field and eat up the field and destroy. Maybe the Torah did not obligate it. So the Torah had to specifically say, you're also going to be responsible for your animal eating, even though it's not all the time, but it's your animal. You must take a responsibility, and you're going to have to pay for the damages. But that's why the Torah has to say also that the damages of Shane, of Maveh, that you're responsible. So you're going to ask, so let the Torah just say the damages of Shane, and we would know that if it eats, so even if you're responsible for something which is not common, like eating, so of course you'll be responsible for something that you should have watched for traveling. So why let the Torah just say that you're responsible for maveh, for the eating? So the Gemara Mishnah Vayter v'loi hare hamaveh kahare asher. The other way too. It's not the same maveh like shur. And basically the kos of Rachmona Shein. If the Torah would have written just Shein without saying also trampling, that you're responsible to pay for what the animal has eaten, I would not know that you're responsible for damages that the animal does while it's walking. Hava Amina, then you might have said, Shein the yeshano lezeka chayiv. A Shein, there is a benefit, it's enjoyment. It enjoys, so it's something it benefited. It benefited from the food that it ate, and because it has hanoah, it's happening. It's going to happen. So maybe you're chayiv in that case, but we don't know. Regel deina no lezeka. It does no benefit. It just broke something. Maybe you're not going to be responsible in that case. There's no benefit. It just walked and it did damage. Eina chayiv. Maybe not chayiv. So we wouldn't know. So the Torah cannot just say Shane that you're responsible, because you might think that Shane is chayiv because it has enjoyment to it. The animal enjoys it, as opposed to regel, which there's no enjoyment. Maybe you're not responsible for there, and therefore we need them both. Okay, so now why does the Torah? So now we know why we need Shen and we need regel, but why do we Torah need to say Eish? Maybe you would be responsible for, if you're responsible for the ox, why would you not be responsible for the fire? So the Mishnah weiter, the loy zeh, and not this and this, the shen and the regel, those are both damages from the animals. Sheyesh behem ruach chaim. There is a spirit of life. The animal is a live thing. The damages is done by something which is a ruach chaim alive. So we can't compare it to fire. There is no life to fire, and therefore, the ikos rachmona shen v'regel v'leikos of eish, says the Bartanura. If the Torah would have written shen and regel without writing eish, then Havamina would still say shen v'regel sheyesh bohen ruach chaim. The shen v'regel, they have a ruach chaim. What does it mean? The tooth, the foot doesn't, not alive, but they come from an animal. Koloimar, to say, sheboim mikoyach ba'alechayim. They come from a living. So if they come from a living, chayiv, you're chayiv. So it's a living thing that is doing damage, then I'm responsible for it. Aval eish, it's inanimate. She'ein bo ruach chaim, there's no spirit of life in it. Maybe you're not going to be liable for damages that a non-living thing does. So that's why the Torah needed to write, even though it written Shen, it written Regel, Torah still had to write also the damage of fire, of hever, the diet of doing damage, because hever, fire is not a living thing, and you might think that you're not chayiv if the damage is done by something which is not living. Okay, so now we know three. So why can't we say these three? Why do we need to say also the fourth damage, the damage of boy? The loy zevozeh shedarkon leilach v'hazik, and not this and this, meaning all three, the shen, the regel, and the eish, that you can't, they're not similar because they go and do the damage. The animal tramples, the animal eats, the fire goes to the field. They're going, the damage is done when they go. The boy's nature, it doesn't go and does damage, it stays in the place. The person gets damaged by coming to the boy. So explains the Bartanura. If the Torah would have written the three, the shoir, the regel, and the mave, the shein, and the eish, hever, and he would not write boir, then I would say, hani lechayvi. These three should be obligated. Shedarkon leilchul hazik, because their nature, they go and do damage. Avol boir shein darkon leilchul hazik, but a pit that doesn't go and does damage, leilchayv alei. There shouldn't be chayv for it. That's why we need them all. So we need to write all for them. But the Bartanura makes a note that in the Gemara, Masik, that the Gemara concludes that the truth is the Torah did not have to write all four. The ikosav boir v'chad mahanach osu kulhu shar. The Torah could have written just boir, and any one of these three, shen, regel, hever, fire, any one of these three together with boir, So that means two. Asukulu shar. All the other ones would be included. And we would know, the Torah didn't have to say, we would know that you're chayiv. The Gemara elaborates how. But levad mikeren. Keren, actually, we're not carrying it, but we're saying, with the exception of Keren, even if the Torah, the Gemara concludes that even if the Torah would have written Boyer and one other one, but Keren we still would not know from the common of the Boyer and the other one. But in any event, so almost seems like the Torah could have written just the two Boyer and one of the other ones, plus Keren, and then we didn't need two of them were not needed. This ched is extra. So the Gemara says that we would have learned, talked about Tanura, we could have learned it behatzad hashove shabahen shadarkum lahazik. There's the common denominator that their nature is to do damage, and therefore we could have learned all the other. The Torah didn't really have to say all four things, or five things, if you count Keren. The Torah could have said just four things, and just three things, and two of them we would have known. However, and we from the tzad hashove, because they nature is to do damage, and Torah is mechayiv, we would be mechayiv the other two as well. And the reason why we needed to write actually out all of them, why the Torah need to write the four categories and Keren, it's because they have different laws. Everybody has a little bit of a different law. So therefore we cannot, as the Bartanura will explain, the Torah has to say, because it's not just chayiv, it's more than just chayiv. Specifically, there is conditions. Sheyesh bazeh ma she'ein bazeh. There is one obligated, one damage, the other one doesn't have. So the Torah has to write each one the damages you be chayiv. He says, Shen v'regel peturim b'rshus harab. We need to say Shen v'regel if the animal goes in the public domain and it eats or it tramples and does damage where it had a right to go in the public domain, where the animal had a right to go, you're not going to have to pay. That's exempt. Masha enke b'boyer v'eish, but boyer and eish would be chayiv if you make the pit in the public domain or the fire consumes in the public domain, you would still be chayiv. So this special halacha exemption in the Reshus Harabim is only for Shen v'regel. And that's why they have to be written for that halacha. Boyer ve'eish would be chayiv. Now, boyer, patur, bei, kro, odom, v'kelim. A boyer, the Torah exempted. A person that falls into the pit, or vessels that fall into the pit and get damaged and get ruined, the owner of the pit is exempt. Odom and Kalim are potter. Diksiv, because when the Torah talks about the damages of the boyer, the Torah says, "V'nofal shama sheirech hamoyer," an ox or a donkey will fall there. So dar shinon. So we expound. The Torah says specifically sheirech hamoyer. So we expound sheir v'loy odom and chamoyer v'loy Kalim. That a sheir and not a person, and the chamoyer and not Kalim. So since it has the special halacha that you are potter for an odom and kalim that fall into the pit, the Torah has to write it separately to make sure that halacha, and it doesn't apply to other cases. The darshin on shoyer v'lo odom, the Torah gives examples shoyer chamoyer. So we say the Torah mentions shoyer to tell you only an ox and not a person. The Torah mentions also chamoyer specifically to tell you kalim, masha'enke b'sharo v'snezikin, as opposed to the other main categories of nezikin. You'd be chayiv whether you did damage to kalim or you did damage to a person. You'd still be chayiv for the damages that you did. What's the special halacha by fire? Eish potter boyes hatomon. By fire, the halacha is, we learn from the pasuk that you're exempt if things were hidden. What means? Let's say he had clothing that were buried, that were hidden within the granary, between the grain over there. Potur Hamavir, the one who made the fire, even though he burned down his garments, he'll be potter because it was hidden. We learned it out from the posik, the ksiv, because when it says by the fire, the Torah says, "Oy hakoma," he'll eat up the godish or the standing grain. So we say makoma begolui, avkol begolui. Just like the standing is open, everybody can see it. So you're only going to be chayiv for something which is in the open. So that's unique to Aish. But the Bisharov is Nezikin. But the other main categories in Nezikin, like Potter as a Tom, he did not exempt the Tom. So Aish is Potter for Tomun. Boir is Potter for Odom and Caleb. Shem Veregel are Potter B'Shus Rabim. So because each one has its own halachas, the Torah had to write each one separately. Although if they were all just chayiv, then we could have learned the Torah didn't have to write everyone. Then the Mishnah says, Atzada Shabbat Shabbat. What is the common denominator between these four categories? And we're going to learn from the common denominators that other things, as explained in the Gemara, Asada Shabashim Chulu, Zog the Bartanura. Afani Ovi Kol Shadalke Lahazik Ushmiros Yolecho. So I can bring in and include anything who usually does damage. In other words, you should anticipate that it may do damage, and you are responsible to watch it, that you'll have to pay. That if he did damage, the one who did the damage will be liable to pay the payments of the damage that he did. So even if it's not any one of these four categories, something new, if you are responsible for it and it's expected, it's normally does damage, then you have to pay the nezek. Says the Mishnah, because it normally does damage, and you are responsible to watch them. And when it did damage, the one who does the damage is liable to pay the payments of his damage in the best of the land. What does it mean, the payments of the damage, the best of the land? That explains the Bartanura. The Meitav Ha'aretz, Me'idis Shebenechosah, from the best of his assets. Min HaMeshubach Shebohem, from the most improved piece of property. Explains the Bartanura. If he comes to give him property to pay the damage, he did damage and he has to pay, so he wants to pay him with a field, with property. So he can't just give him property, he has to give him the best of the property. He has to give him the best of the property. The Pasuk says, Meitav Sadehu, Meitav Karma Yishalim, the best of his field and the best of his orchard he shall pay, meaning that you have to give the person from your improved and better, not from the inferior of your fields. However, says the Bartanura, if he coming to give him movables, Kaimalon, over there we have the halacha that called mili meitavu. Movable objects are all considered to be best. You don't have to give the best of the movables. If you're giving him a taltalin, anything is meitavu. The iloi mizdaben hacha mizdaben masach. If you can't sell it over here, you sell it elsewhere. So whatever you give him, it's always sellable because it's movable. So you can take it. A property, it stays in one place. It stays where you are. But this is movable, so you'll be able to sell it, and you can give him a taltalin of anything. You can give him whatever you wish. You don't have to give afilu subin, even the worst of the grain, you can give him because you can still sell it. It says the Bartanura, Vahani Mili Nizokim. This only applies to the law of Nizokim. Aval Bal Chayiv, but for a Bal Chayiv. Meaning, if you borrowed money and you took money, you can't just pay him back with other things, with property or with metaltlin, with movable object. If you have money, you have to give money. You owe him the money, he gave you money, you have to give him back money. But if you don't have any money, so metal, you can give him, he doesn't have any money, so you give him any movables, and we said before, doesn't matter because everything is considered the best. But if you are giving him property for the money you borrowed, so here you give the middle. You don't have to give like by nizikin damages. You have to pay from the best of your field. But if you borrow the money, you're paying with a field. When you don't have money, you can give the middle level of the field. V'sochim, if you hired a person to work for you, afilu lesle zuzah lemaskir, even if the one who hired doesn't have any money to pay him. You can't give him for his pay. You must give him money. We'll tell the one who hired the workers that you sell your assets until you find money and you will give it.